And we realize that all thought, all emotion, all those judgments and opinions, they're just floating through, floating through, floating through. And we have our particular karmic bundle of them. And at its core is this bright, intimate place. And perhaps that's what having a kinsho or having some kind of real awakening is we suddenly turn our attention, we suddenly turn our awareness from being engaged with all the external things, either very external, the shopping world, or even the thinking, feeling world. And we turn our attention to what is most intimate. And our own clear mind, which has always been liberated. Our own clear mind, which has never been bound. Our own clear mind, which is not worried by internal or external conditions. Always bright and clear. But that still is not enough. We may have an experience of that, but it has to be active. It has to radiate through our activity. People can act and do the same action, but its foundation, its basis, can be very, very different. We can practice the same ethics, not to lie but to speak the truth, or not to kill but to cherish all life. And one person sees not killing in one way, and another person who sees this foundation sees not killing. There is no one else. And both practice the practice of not killing. The external action is not the criterion so much. It is the state of mind. It is the foundation from which these actions come. And of course, everyone who works on koans knows that that's the both exciting challenge of a koan. It's not as though we can work on a koan and we can't see a certain kind of answer to it. That's not so hard. But to actually have that answer come from this deep, genuine, boundless, bright place, and have that be what's infusing our answer, and that be what gives life to life, that is a very, very different practice, and not so easy sometimes. But that is the purpose. That is one of the hallmarks of as our Zen Buddhist practice continues to mature, that our life has a certain depth to it. Our life has a certain richness to it, based upon our ability to turn the attention, to be involved in, to be engaged in the deeper levels of samadhi before thought. All mature spiritual traditions have some version of this. It is this inner place of freedom. But the inner place of freedom is not a place, it's not a thing. It's not as though someone finds this inner place of freedom. It has to function. And in that case, it has to function as a bodhisattva. Otherwise, it's not genuine. If we're not functioning as bodhisattvas, as enlightened beings who are doing their best to be a benefit to others, whatever that means, then we don't see the oneness of all things. It is experiencing a little taste of the oneness of all things is the foundation for the awakened mind, for the bodhisattva mind, for bodhicitta, the aspiration to become awakened for the sake of all beings. And some particular traditions emphasize act like a bodhisattva, be as good and kind a person as you can be, and then in the process of doing that, look more and more deeply and realize what's at its core. And other traditions emphasize realize what's at its core and then act more and more like a bodhisattva. And they're just different flavors. Different traditions have different flavors. They can't be separated, of course. So Gute's finger There's one of the koans in the Mulan Khan, the record of koans, the gateless gate, and it's also in the Hekigan Roku, the Blue Cliff record. And the Mulan Khan is slightly more elaborated. The case goes like this. Whenever Gute Osho was asked about Zen, he simply raised his finger. Once a visitor asked Gute's boy attendant, "What does your master teach?" The boy too raised a finger. This raising a finger, anybody can raise a finger. We all have fingers. We all have the ability to hold it up in the air one way or another. But this is a great realized being. So the first question is their finger the same or different than our finger? If it is the same, we all are deeply realized beings. If it's different, then what? What makes them special or us not special? Gute's finger, whenever he was asked a question, he revealed this fundamental truth of the oneness of all things over and over, using this particular expression, this particular gesture. Is that the teaching? Just flapping his hand up or finger up in the air, is that the teaching? Or is there something more essential? If there's more, then there's got to be two different things. There's this and there's that. So the first real question for working with any kind of koan is we have to go right down to the very root and give life to our life. See what the root is. And this boy, who is his attendant, saw the external, saw the outer vertical form of Gute's answer. And anybody can pretend the outer form. It's just like the first stage of samadhi we talked about. We see somebody do things a certain way and we model ourselves on them, which, if it's a beneficent activity, certainly is worthwhile, certainly a useful way of learning, to do as if, to act as if we are really good people, to act as if we really are compassionate and warm, is, of course, a wonderful, wonderful activity. It is not, there's a different quality of genuineness that we're capable of, because we have to know something more intimate. So this boy, of course, is acting as if he is talking about, presenting the truth. And one day Gute saw him acting as if, pretending that he knew. Just like all of us, we tend to pretend that we are wiser. People come into Sanzen often pretending that they are, which, not so bad. Better than coming in the opposite, saying, I'm just a miserable skunk and, a worthless, hopeless being. Better to pretend that we are really an enlightened being. But that's not genuine. That's not really, doesn't satisfy the heart. So in all koans, in all practice, we can sit erect, we can sit straight, we can be present in Sesshin, we can, act as if we were a Buddha. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. And yet, that does not satisfy the deep distress, does not satisfy the heart, it does not satisfy the part that wants to know what is real. That requires more and more intimacy. That requires the intimacy of before thought. Gute heard this boy and he wanted to teach him, and so he shocked him, caught his attention during the koan, the cuts off his finger, which, probability of that actually being the case is 0. Many of you have tried to actually cut off part of if you were a meat eater, tried to cut off a part of chicken. It's not so easy to do, or not so easy to cut off a finger or cut off a hand unless you have a table saw. So this is just an analogy, it's just an expression. It really caught his attention. And of course, that is what all of us are hoping for, is to have something that catches our attention so intensely, that catches our attention so deeply, that we look right past all of the stuff and see what is most true. Caught his attention. The boy went running out of the room, and Gute said, "Hey, wait." Turned around, and Gute was holding up a finger. And at that, the boy became awakened. His mind was receptive at that point. Our particular practice is we are practicing, not only are we acting as if Buddhists, but we're also ripening our mind. We're ripening our awareness. We're ripening our ability to see what is most deep. And then at some point, in the near future, in the far future, at some point, something, either traumatic or very subtle, touches us very deeply. And something that has always been there is seen clearly. One person who was doing kinhin, the teacher said, "No gaps." And just that word, "no gaps," suddenly realized everything was whole. There were no gaps anywhere. There's a very famous story of a Zen priest Kyogen who was practicing in a monastery very, very hard, very, very diligently, very assiduously, and became incredibly frustrated. He gave up. But he continued his practice and he went and took care of a grave. One day as he was sweeping the leaves off the grave, a stone hit a piece of bamboo. And that sound, the stone hitting a bamboo, so subtle, caught his attention, opened his mind. So we are practicing as if we are Buddha. We are ripening our mind, and we also are expressing and embodying the deep truth, because how can we not? And whether we realize it or not, this intimate truth, this life that we live, is whole and complete, lacking nothing. And yet we have to constantly be practicing with it. When Gute was about to pass away, he said to his assembled monks,